Services Marketing, Part 2. Part 2 of Services Marketing focuses specifically on the characteristics of services. These were introduced in Part 1, and now we're going to look at them in more detail. Before we move on to today's topic, let's recap on what we looked at in Part 1. So we looked at the core definition of services marketing, and we looked at how one of the core elements of services is that there's a lack of ownership when you consume a service. We established that services differ from goods along various dimensions. We talked about how a service is an act or a performance, and that act or performance is done by both the service provider and the consumer of a service. A service elicits some form of change within the customer, whether that's a change in the nature of the possessions they have, or a more intangible change to their sense of well-being or enjoyment. And we also saw that services form the basis of any modern economy. So in talking about services, we're talking about something fundamental to the whole scope of business. Here is a reintroduction to the 4 core characteristics of services. In Part 1, we talked about how the underpinning characteristic is lack of ownership. And then on top of lack of ownership, we build these 4 characteristics: intangibility, inseparability, perishability, and variability. Let's focus on the first characteristic, intangibility, which means unable to be touched. And that is literally what it means. It comes from the Latin tangere, which means to touch. So something that's intangible just simply cannot be touched. It means it's beyond our grasp. We can't sense it in a normal way. And this can be a problem for us as customers because we can't use the senses in the same way as we do when we're trying to purchase, for example, a physical product. So if you were to go and buy a new bag for uni, you can visit a shop, you can pick it up, feel the material, see the quality of the workmanship, you can try it on, you can then go away and think about it and perhaps look at a range of different bags. Then you can buy it if you like it, and then if you find a better one, you could even return it and get a refund. All of these things are basically impossible with a service. You can't pick it up, try it on, buy it, and then return it if you decide that you don't like it at a later date. For example, you can't order a meal, eat it, and then decide you didn't enjoy it and return it. The experience is over. So this creates a number of difficulties for us as marketers. To help customers in decision making with buying a service, marketers provide tangible cues to help the customer make the right decision before purchasing. Think about how you might use tangible cues in your decision making process in a service situation we all find ourselves in sometime, like a restaurant, for example, going to a restaurant for lunch. What tangible cues might you use, and which senses would you use in each case to make those decisions? You might use sight, for example, to read the menu, look at the prices, consider the decor of the restaurant. You want to see if the restaurant is busy. You may also use smell. Does it smell nice, appetizing, or is there a smell of burning, for example, which is something you don't want coming from the kitchen of a restaurant? When you're inside, you may see if the staff greet you and show you to a table with courtesy and sincerity, or perhaps they ignore you. How does this make you feel? You may go in and hear that they are playing really bad music on the speaker system, and it's not to your taste. Perhaps it's too loud, or just a genre of music you're not into. You might want to choose somewhere quieter. So the intangibility of services makes them a risky purchase for us as consumers. So the more tangible marketers can make the service product, the more we feel we are reducing the risk we're taking on as a customer. And one of the things that's very important to tangibilizing services is the branding. And I'm sure you have experience of seeing branded restaurants that are commonplace on the high street, or if you go to an airport, for example, most of the restaurants you see usually belong to a branded chain. And that is marketing in action, trying to tangibilize and use tangible cues to communicate quality and reliability and lack of risk to us as customers. So there are some characteristics that we can associate with intangibility. It reminds us that services are a performance or a form of human effort in their production and consumption. It tells us that there is a higher level of difficulty in evaluating a service because of its intangibility. What variables are you using in order to establish whether something was of quality when you can't pick it up and touch it, smell it, feel it? It reminds us of the non-ownership element of services, because if it's intangible, it inherently cannot be owned and taken away. And we remind ourselves of the importance of using tangible cues in order to communicate quality and low risk to the customer. And that is something that we'll go on to look at in part 3 as well.